So to our final part of the 2025 Isle of Man Government Conference, and to officially round it off and draw it to a close, please show your appreciation for the island's Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon. Mr. Cannon, obviously this has been a hectic 2 days. I think it's fair to say it's been a busy schedule, and the audience has been a bumper audience. Certainly, I know at certain points yesterday and today, the screen was in the other room to fit everybody in. It's important to have questions put directly to yourself and your government colleagues and ministers and business leaders, etc. What, as an overview, do you think you and your colleagues initially have taken from the last 2 days?
Well, thank you, James, and thank you all very much for staying to hear me close this conference out. I heard the former Chief Minister say on the radio that not much was achieved in the final year of a government. Well, I can absolutely assure he was probably speaking for himself, but not for me or the Council of Ministers. I hope what this conference has set out to do, or what the conference has absolutely sets out to do, was to allow us, as the Council of Ministers, as government, to clarify our agenda, our priorities over the next 12 months and beyond, perhaps reflect on where we have come from, but also to engage in questions and debate with the audience, and to enhance that through our panel members. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I hope you'll agree that the quality of the presentations that we've had during the past 2 days has been excellent. I'd like to thank everybody who's come along to support that, the ministers, the government officials, and of course our guest speakers. I just quickly want to reflect on three of those presentations. I thought James Pomeroy's independent view and analysis of the global conditions around us and vis-a-vis how they might be impacting on the Isle of Man was first class. And I think, again, part of this conference was to try and give us all a wider exposure and to introduce some wider thinking into government policy. Obviously, we've heard from Jim Mellon. Jim, I remain incredibly grateful, as does everybody, for the investments that you continue to make into the Isle of Man, and indeed for the latest announcement of your robotics leasing company. And we all look at that, and we'll be looking at that with a great deal of interest. And I thought, just one if I can, we had one of the things this government's done is put in an operations performance board, and with that operations performance board, we've brought in 2 non-executive directors. You heard from one of those non-executive directors today, Guy Templar, who gave, I think, a fairly strong critique of what we needed to do as an organisation to really drive ourselves forward. And I think, the more that we have of that, of government, that interaction with, and I know a lot of people have called for it, professionals who live in our community who will come in, objectively assess and give their expertise and experience and feed that into us, delivering better government services. That's got to be hugely welcomed and very important, and I hope some of that's also come through from other guests that we've had up on the stage today. And thirdly, the other thing that struck me about this conference is that we've heard some incredible questions and views coming forward from everybody who's come to see and listen and hear about our policies, and also challenge those and add to the debate. So I really want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's input in that way. And you sometimes think that those are just questions and you're scrutinising, but when we hear thoughts and input like that, it does make a difference, I can assure you. And people come away with a slightly different view, and it does help shape our thinking. So thank you very much.
So actually, events like this can help shape and working together to help shape even a small part of the island's future. You can't, presumably events like this then, you do go back and discuss a number of the issues raised.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm doubtless tomorrow when we meet as a council, we'll be reflecting on the last 2 days. And, individual ministers will have heard things from the audience, will have heard things from the networking that's been done, will have heard things from those private conversations that we've had with attendees and others. And, that will help feed back into government policy.
We've heard a lot over the last couple of days. Obviously, this is the fourth and final conference, if you like, of the Cannon administration. Off the top of your head, what would you say are there's more, but what would you say are the three priorities that you want to see through or certainly progress to a significant level between now and this time next year?
Well, interestingly enough, I've spent the summer and so have the ministers, reflecting and seeking to understand what their priorities would be over the last 12 months. About 3 weeks ago, we met as a group and, put our thoughts out there, as I did, in fact, took the time also to consult with some of my wider colleagues in Tynwald. I can tell you there's more than three things that we need to address, but, certain, in fact, there's probably about seven. But the economy, as I outlined in my speech yesterday, in terms of, one, a refresh, secondly, that focus that we need to be, and we've heard a lot at this conference about digital and AI, so that focus on AI and bringing it together. I don't think we can ignore that challenge, but we have also heard from Tim Johnston and Alex Allinson about their plans in terms of helping drive the economy forward, and we're not going to take our foot off the pedal when it comes to driving initiatives forwards to, for example, increase our visitors' numbers. I know Michelle Hayward outlined plans to improve our airport infrastructure and, that broader plans that we have to improve our connectivity and to keep supporting the air routes, which have been under huge pressure. We've heard from Claire Christian about our drive. I hope the solution to get rid of our waiting lists with dental health care and our drive to reduce the waiting time for GP appointments and roll out our healthcare in the community. And I know, from Daphne Kane, for example, that quality assurance scheme, and we're tremendously proud. We brought that in this administration to try and drive higher standards. I'm sure there's a lot more to do in that field, but I think we heard a very strong and detailed presentation yesterday about everything that education is achieving and we intend to achieve over this next 12 months, including preparing for the Island Games in 2029 and the capital expenditure that will go with that. And things like, for example, the brownfield sites. Anybody who's driving around Douglas at the moment will know there's two clear significant developments which are driving our economy forward, creating jobs in that local area, and I hope we'll eventually see people coming to work in offices and stay in hotels and buy apartments. Those the Tavere Group out down on the promenade by the RBSI, what was the RBSI building, and Lake Road at Tesco's, where there's a significant development, and that's been driven by government initiatives that we've brought forward to start getting those brownfield sites developed and try and tackle the housing crisis. So a huge amount for us to do, and I've probably only just skimmed the surface. We will not be stopping. We're going to continue to drive these projects and these policies through, and of course some will be legacy and will carry on into the next administration, I'm sure.
Every time there is a general election, certainly for the last 30 years, possibly longer, you hear critics, whoever they may be, say, oh, this is the worst administration in my lifetime. I mean, it's inevitable. Do you think often those who shout loudest and the most vocal critics get heard, and actually, as Jim Mellon's referred to, perhaps as an island, we don't sing loudly enough about some of our success stories and about the positives? Of course, there are negatives, but do you think we are insular in that regard sometimes?
Well, I think the purpose of trying to have independent speakers here, and James Pomeroy, I think, gave a very extensive view of the challenges facing all countries globally, and perhaps we might have picked up a taster of how some of those are reflecting on the island and therefore driving the government policies we need to address those challenges. Of course, we've had a very erudite presentation from Jim Mellon, and we've seen some more opportunities that can be achieved from the island. So, look, I mean, the political environment is very unstable globally. It's very volatile. Of course, it reflects over here, and I guess when we're in these types of environment, we do have that opportunity to have a sensible discussion away from perhaps the noise of social media. And I think a lot of the political discussions are sound bites. They're driven by, social media and lots of attitudes and a very divided society over a lot of issues at the moment. So, look, it's for us as politicians to seek to explain our position. That's all we can do, and for us to be able to try and communicate that out. And clearly, obviously, an environment like this gives us an opportunity to engage in discussion, talk about our policies. But there's obviously a lot of noise around, and there's obviously a lot of divided views.
Has it aged you, being Chief Minister?
I think I look younger, actually, than 4 years ago. But no, listen, I mean, I'm very privileged. The job clearly doesn't come without its pressures. Of course it does. I just remain, I'm very optimistic. I try and stay optimistic about it, and I'm very privileged to hold that position. And as long as I do, I'll obviously do my very best.